Hello, and welcome to another episode of From the Plant Floor Up. Today we have Jeff Smith, CTO of DYNICS, talking to Kevin Berisso, Associate Professor, Director, Automatic Identification Lab at the University of Memphis in their Department of Engineering Technology. Jeff, Kevin, take it away.
How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you coming on today. Just wondering if you can give us a little bit of background on the University of Memphis, your department, maybe a little bit of your experience, kind of let everyone know where you're coming from.
Sure, happy to. So, I am part of the Department of Engineering Technology. Engineering technology is the applied side of the college, the Herf College of Engineering. And so, our classes, our program really is much more hands-on, a little bit less theory, a little bit less math, which is what a lot of people like. But at the same time, we do have plenty of traditional engineering students, mechanical, electrical, things like that, who have switched over from those traditional disciplines to engineering technology because they look at their classmates and their friends and they say, hey, those folks over in engineering technology are building things, they're integrating things, they're working with real technology. They're not just talking about the theory of how a network works or how a PLC, programmable logic controller, works or a robot works, but they're actually programming the robots to do solutions and provide end user things that a company and ultimately their employer is going to need or their customer is going to need. And so as a part of that, my background is I used to work for a software company doing warehouse management software. I used to work for Delphi Automotive in batteries manufacturing as a manufacturing engineer, designing the equipment to build car batteries. I've been teaching robotics and PLCs and automation in general for over 20 years, almost 25 years now, if you include some of the work during my PhD when I was teaching classes then. And so a lot of what I've done, a lot of what our students, when they graduate, end up going and doing is to be that systems integrator, that plant floor engineering support service, ultimately trying to get a lot of our students on the manufacturing side into a plant manager type role. We have in our program automation and controls, but we also have a networking and software concentration that the students are able to take. And so they also, in addition to that, they also have to take two areas. And so they could do automation controls and software, automation controls and networking. And so as a result of that, when I ran into Chris at Automate, I think it was last year, I was really excited that we were able to bring some of what you guys have in your portfolio into our classrooms so that we would have the ability to show the students, once again, what is happening in the real world, because the robots in my lab are not the 1970s and 80s tech ed style robots where they do stuff, but they're not really robust enough. These are industrial robots that you can find out on a plant floor in any country or in any company, around the world, really. We're using Allen Bradley PLCs. We have Siemens PLCs. We're doing Cisco primarily for our networking classes. And so, yeah, that's what the department at the University of Memphis is doing.
That sounds great. It's always encouraging, and from the I don't know the other side of the academia where we're actually out in the field doing and playing and building, and I was an end user myself for 25 years, so it's always refreshing when schools understand that there's a great amount of value in traditional academic learning, but there's also an absolute need and a tremendous amount of value in going that extra mile and really making sure they understand that when they hit the workforce and out in the job market, what they're actually going to run into, and try to stay more in tune with that. I think that's kudos to your school and your program, because not a lot of programs do that, right? So that's a feather in your cap. So you mentioned that, you were excited about getting some of the DYNICS stuff. Can you kind of talk a little bit about the tool set? What it was about what you saw that attracted your attention or that caught your eye that, made you say, gosh, I want to get this in and start working with it. And I will add the caveat that we're going to have to fix that teaching networking on Cisco switches thing, but I can help you there too.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah. So when I came by the booth at Automate last year, looking around, looking at what you guys had, because I teach the PLC classes, the ICS360 Fusion really caught my eye. One of the challenges that as educators we're seeing more and more is, for some reason, the students coming into college a lot of the times are not as traditionally programming savvy as we would like to see. And while, yes, we can spend the time and do spend the time trying to get that deficiency, that hole in their tool set fixed, having that flow chart, that drag and drop type of interface for being able to talk to the PLCs, and more importantly, being able to take over some of the functionality that, at least within the Rockwell automation software suite, honestly, it's just painful. One of the first projects I worked on when I came to the University of Memphis, I was at Ohio University for 8 years before I came here in 2013. But one of the first projects I did was help a local company trying to use the Allen Bradley Rockwell Automation Transaction Manager solution, because they're trying to store information in a database and retrieve information from the database with the PLC. And as I got talking to the folks at the booth and realized how much easier Fusion made that whole process, it just really kind of kicked off a whole bunch of thought processes for me, because I've tried to teach Transaction Manager in class and it's worked some semesters, and other semesters, I mean, to say it fell flat on its face would have been a huge step up from what it really was. And a lot of it's because the students didn't understand the databasing and they didn't have that background, so it's not their fault. But getting that functionality to just work, because one of the things I pride myself on in my classes is the students have to do a final project live customer acceptance style demo. And so I will invite industry folks locally to come in and grill the students on why did they choose A, B, C, D in their project? Why did they make this decision? What did they do when they had that type of a problem? And trying to do that with Transaction Manager, I tried that twice and said, okay, enough of this. We're not going down that road anymore. But when I saw how Fusion made that so much cleaner and easier, it became I need to be able to reintroduce this. We need to do some other stuff that allows for that expansion of the experience beyond kind of the four walls that a traditional PLC class offers. Then the other thing that I find myself doing a lot, Chris mentioned part of my role is the director of the Automatic Identification Lab, barcodes, RFID, stuff like that. And one of the things that I make my students do in the automation classes, PLCs and robotics, is talk to that barcode reader, talk to the RFID reader, integrate so that the automation can make a logical decision, just like you see in industry. And so having those additional tools where I can spend a couple of class periods talking about how Fusion works and how to do that mapping between the different components is a reasonable chunk of time to take out of class. Teaching them, especially for the robotics class, teaching them how to do the PLC stuff isn't always a viable option in getting the students to where they need to be able to do their project. And so the quality of the project is downgraded, and what they get out of it, in my opinion, is downgraded. And so having something like Fusion is allowing me to take those students, like I said, that don't have that background necessarily, and still get them exposure to it in a reasonably less painful way, maybe is the best way to phrase it.
Right, right. Reasonably less painful. I kind of like that. Yeah, we've got a number of customers that have transitioned to Fusion from that particular Rockwell product transaction manager you mentioned. So
Yeah.
I had some experience with it back in my end user days as well. So I certainly understand what you're referring to there. Um, so I think it's interesting, and I'm going to, by the way, send you the latest release of Fusion that was just released yesterday, so you can make sure you're playing with the latest and greatest. Some of the interesting things we did was we had a customer who was trying to insert data into AWS MySQL instances, and he was trying to get a couple of thousand records per minute introduced into this. So I gave it over to my team, and I said, he needs, let's say the bogey is 4,000. How fast can we do it? They sent him a build for testing today that does 52,000 records per minute into the AWS MySQL instance. So,
Holy mackerel, that's impressive.
yeah, so he kind of exceeded his requirements, and I always like to go. And my team is a bunch of overachievers, so I say 4,000, they give me 50,000. So,
Yeah. Well, what's an extra factor of 10, right?
right. Yeah. Yes. Like, and so now, of course, I've told them you've set the bar. So when I ask you for something in the future, I expect you to exceed my expectations by a factor of 10. And the other thing I always tell them is, well, it's only software. Why is this a problem?
How hard could it be, right?
That's right. They love it when I say that. They also love it when I test. They, having spent time in the field when I test software, I'm the guy that would put peanut butter in the VCR because you can. There's an opening, so put some peanut butter in there. And they'll often look at me and say, well, why would you even do that? Well, because I could. There was a button there to click, so I clicked it.
Yeah,
So,
no, that whole testing process really, in a sense, is an art. When I was in Ohio, one of the MIS professors used to bring me into his class as a 400 level class, and they were doing REST API apps, and it was a really cool class. I liked what he did, and they had to do an order entry interface that talked to a backend database and all the good stuff that you would expect there. And
right.
so he would videotape the demos, and I would ask my questions. And it got to the point, apparently, after a number of times showing up to this, that it was like the students would be like, "Oh no, it's that guy. He's here."
Yeah.
Because I would say, "Okay, I want to place an order for negative 52 million parts." And
Right.
does the interface trap for that correctly, or does it break and blow up? And in the earlier times, I would catch them every single time because they would want to use the smallest integer data object they could with whatever language they were using, and not realize that. And then the negative threw them off for a few years. But yeah, having that ability to test things is important. And the nice thing about at least the Fusion, because that's where I spent most of my time playing, was it was nice and safe in a way, because I occasionally get these students who are scared about trying something because they're concerned they're going to break it. And I tell them, listen,
Right.
especially with the software, we don't have it. Nothing here is connected in a way that if you turn on both of these outputs simultaneously, you will cause a nuclear explosion. We don't have to worry about that. And so try it. Worst that happens is maybe you crash the software, big deal, reboot the computer and keep going. But be willing to do that iteration and testing. And the big thing in software project management and development seems to be fail fast, fail often concept still. And when you're developing these solutions for your job, for your customer, whatever it is, be able to do that. Now, do it logically, make sure you have the backup of what you've done and before you test it. But having these tools and these real world tools that are outside of, like I said, that Rockwell, Allen Bradley four walls is a huge thing for the students, because it really does allow them to realize, oh, there are other solutions out there. Hopefully they go in the direction of DYNICS, but even if they don't, they at least realize there are other tools out there. And the fact that you guys are aware enough that by having my students use your solutions, they're going to be predisposed to wanting to use it because that's all they know, is a great job on your guys' part as well.
I appreciate that. And for the record, if you do crash my software, I want to know.
Oh yeah, we will. I am notorious for having the tech support discussions of, no one's ever tried to use the software that way before, and it wasn't meant to do that, but let's see if we can figure it out.
Yeah, we're pretty good at catching those edge cases, but on the slim chance you find one, yeah, definitely want to know about it. It's interesting you talk about those four walls, and it's in the context of Rockwell, it's not I was a big Rockwell user, and and this is true of a lot of big companies. Sometimes they have if we didn't make it, it's no good. Or I used to tell, I would have conversations with different executives at Rockwell, and I'd say, you got to stop looking at these problems with your Rockwell goggles on, because those goggles are filtering out everything but the Rockwell viewpoint. And I said, SIP security was a great example, because they wanted to put SIP security on everything, and everything has to talk SIP security. And I said, well, so first of all, you guys don't make torque tools, and I need to put those on an Ethernet IP network. So if they won't talk to your PLC because they don't support SIP security, I can't use your PLC. I said, so don't make it mandatory or you're going to lose customers. I said, you don't make leak testers. You don't make stamping presses. You don't make a lot of things that have to live on the same network. So if in a perfect world with my Rockwell goggles on, every device on my network was a Rockwell device, which I know for Rockwell, they would love that. Then there's some validity to that viewpoint. But when that's not the case, you certainly have to, as those larger companies, they really have to understand that it's a very diverse ecosystem out on the plant floor. It's old, it's new, it's all sorts of different things. So trying to keep an open mind is important, and that's one of the things that at DYNICS we strive to make sure our products are flexible. Nothing used to drive me crazy more than I would have someone bring me this product. I would really like the product. It made a lot of sense to me. I could see 10 places I could put the product in play. And then they would throw the requirements in there. Yeah, but you'll have to change the way you do this, or you'll have to adjust the way. And I'm thinking, this is 24/7 critical production. We're not going to change that stuff to use your product. I need a product that's flexible enough to bring me the benefit I want, but also fit into my environment in a way that's as least disruptive as possible. And that's something we try to do on purpose. When it happens, it's not an accident with DYNICS. We've done it on purpose. So, Chris, I know we were going to talk a little bit about some of the University of Memphis and DYNICS relationship. I think from a DYNICS perspective, I say Chris because I was going to try to drag him into the conversation, but from a DYNICS perspective, and I'm not sure if you and I have had this chat or not, but we're a big believer in helping schools, universities, academia, because as you mentioned, helping up armor these kids so when they get out of school they're prepared for the workplace is important to us. So it's important to us to be a part of that. So it's one of our presiding philosophies, if you will. So whenever we have the opportunity to help a school, and a school is as forward thinking as you are, we certainly enjoy getting involved and providing the tools you need to teach your students to prepare them for the workforce.
Yeah, no, it's been the relationship so far has been great. I don't see it going anywhere but up from here. We had so one of the classes that students have to do is a senior design class sequence. And so we had one young lady who took on the challenge of trying to learn the the system kind of from the ground up on the fly as she was doing stuff. And oh, by the way, she also right at the end of the semester had a child on top of that.
Boy.
But, yeah, but so she was able to work with the Defender solution with the Nano you guys had sent us. And
Okay.
what we ended up doing was we took a couple of the MicroLogix PLCs I have laying around, because let's face it, the old 1100s, they're workhorses, but they're also significantly out of terms of updatedness. And so because she had not had the PLC classes, what we ended up doing is I just set up a pair of those processors to talk back and forth on the network with each other. We're just trading counts back and forth, and then talking to a HMI device as one of the little Panel View Plus units that I had laying around. But she was having trouble getting everything to work. She couldn't figure out why. She realized that, it's already actually securing the network and blocking these messages because she missed a checkbox somewhere that said, "Oh yeah, no, do allow this type of a scenario." And without, I mean, she spent a lot of time. She did a great job on it. And the tech support we got from you guys was exactly what we needed at a perfect level. But she was able to very quickly realize and understand, this is why X is happening, and this is why something else is happening, and here's how to allow, disallow, create those unique rules that your solution provides for. And I can't imagine how she would ever be allowed to learn that outside of a classroom-esque type of an environment. I guess at her own pace in a sense. Especially as she got closer to delivery of her child. My guess is she wasn't always 100% in the moment of what she was working on, and so being able to come in and test stuff and try stuff, and we did some weird tests with flooding the network with messages and some other things to see how well it did and what the repercussions of turning this option on or that option on had on the network. And her being able to do all that in that safe environment. We do have a sandbox network that she was working on, so it wasn't the regular university network, but so having that equipment really allowed her to kind of solidify all the other classes she had taken on networking and everything else during her program. So thank you very much for allowing her to have that opportunity.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. It's I'll tell you, sometimes I make the stuff and I will sometimes forget. I'll fiddle with something for 5 minutes trying to figure out why it's not talking, and then I'll realize, because on this thing we created, you can't actually talk unless you allow it to talk. So then we'll have to go in and add there. In fact, I did that not 35 minutes ago. Had to add the rules to an SDN controller and to a Defender to get to something I wanted to reach. So it's that deny by default, right? It's the safety net. In the absence of truly understanding what somebody might be doing, nothing gets through, as opposed to so many other solutions out there, which are let everything through and hopefully they're smart enough to figure out what they want to stop. That's contrary to the way we approach cybersecurity on the plant floor, right? So it's a philosophical difference, but deny by default is something you'll hear us talk about a lot. So, I would rather it bite me every now and then, and I have to stop and think about it for a minute, versus I just start adding stuff to the network and everything can talk and everything's happy, and I don't really know who's talking to what, where, doing what. So it's all good. I think we're getting close to time. It's been a great conversation. I certainly appreciate having you on, and I look forward to continuing the conversation and continuing working with you in the school and doing whatever we can to help.
I appreciate that very much. We'll enjoy continuing to use Fusion for my PLC class. I know that Dan, unfortunately, was not able to join us. He's the professor that does the networking and security at the classes at the moment. But I know he's looking forward to being able to have his students get this alternative solution to the generic Cisco solution under their belt. It's only going to provide additional students out there that have a quality education and allow the department and the university and the college to have that solid reputation that we currently enjoy, I think.
All right. Well, I certainly appreciate it. And I will send you an email shortly with some links to some updates so you can pull the new version of Fusion and get that going in the lab environment or with students. And we'll probably want to tie out on the Defender as well, and some of that, as we've done some recent releases with some new functionality that will probably be useful in the classroom environment. So again, I appreciate your time today, and I look forward to talking next time.
Sounds great. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.